Good morning. Welcome to Sierra Vista Community Church. We're really happy that you've decided to join us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you in person. We don't have a date yet, but we are preparing the church and we are monitoring the situation, so hopefully we'll be there soon in person. I hope all of you are doing well and are staying safe. We do have some announcements this morning. First of all, we want to remember little baby Vienna, who is fighting cancer, and she's gone through several stages of chemotherapy, and there's a big day coming up on Tuesday. She's going to be having surgery to remove as much of the cancer as possible. So we ask you to pray and fast for Vienna, also Vanessa and William, her parents, and the good ones as they go through this time. So please support them, pray for them, and fast for them. And they also wanted me to tell you that they appreciate all the prayers and all the support they've received from you all these months during this really difficult time. Okay, the women's group will be taking some time off until the month of July. So stay tuned for the next class that they're going to start up with. And finally, Summer Blast is coming up. You've probably seen some emails from me, and hopefully you're getting excited. I know I am. I think it's a great time for the church, and it's a great time to be able to present Christ to the community. So that's coming up, and I encourage you to volunteer, and I encourage you to register all your friends, your neighbors, your kids, your grandkids for this event that's coming up. And then, I've been so excited. It's been hard to sleep lately, and I woke up this morning and I had a bunch of questions, so I decided to have a Zoom conference with Susie and ask her some of these questions, which maybe these are questions that you've thought of too. So watch this next clip here, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So Susie, thanks for joining us this morning. We've got some questions for you about the volunteering for Summer Blast. And yeah, we hope that you can help us out here, because I know a lot of people are interested, but maybe they just don't know, what it's about this year, especially because it's kind of a different way of doing things. So there's a few questions we wanted to ask you. So okay. First of all, thank you so much for all your effort in putting this together.
Oh yeah, it's been fun so far.
Okay. All right. Well, so we want to know, how many volunteers do you need?
Well, we have a lot of jobs to do. I counted about 50 jobs. So I guess in a perfect world, we would have 50 volunteers. Okay. But, different volunteers can do different, one volunteer can do two different jobs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So for example, a tribe leader could also be a tent host or and also help decorate. So I do think we can do it with about maybe 25 to 30 volunteers.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned a tribe leader. Can you tell us what a tribe leader is or what they do?
Yes. A tribe leader is actually going to be totally on video. So what they do is they introduce the Bible point at the beginning of the videos, and then at the end they come back and they review the Bible story and lessons, and they basically close it out. So we actually can have two different people because, there are 12 tribes in Israel. So we would like to have one person do the introduction part and somebody else do the closing.
Okay. So each person then would be recorded, and they would be put into the story. So there's going to be like another recording of the story itself, or
right. Okay. Right, because our main teaching is Moses. So we already have our Moses, and so he's going to be doing our main teaching and story. So the introduction of that Bible point is going to be done by the tribe leader. And then at the end, the tribe leader is going to come back to review it and wrap it up and do a little activity on the video with the kids.
Okay, so there's a craft after the main lesson, and the craft will be recorded also, how you do the craft, and kind of like as if you were there, but we're just going to record it. And then when the people are home, they basically just watch these videos of the whole thing, the introduction, the story for the day, the lesson for the day, and then the closing, and then the craft. So they'll be able to know how to do, because they will have received a kit earlier in the week, right? And
right.
and they'll have the materials. So the video will kind of walk them through it as if they were sitting in church with their leader doing
Yes,
the craft.
exactly. Right. And actually, the craft is done by the tent host. So we actually have up on our website the presentation that I did for our meeting, and that has the order of the video segments. So the craft is done after Moses gives his lesson. And that, like I said, is done by the tent host. And those are like Bible time type crafts. Like one of them is they learn how to use a weaving loom. Another one is they learn how to tie different knots in a rope. Another one is actually making butter. So there are different things like that. So the tent host would show how to do that activity and kind of explain a little bit about that activity in Bible times.
Okay, great. Okay. So let's see. So you told us about the tribe leaders, and then we have tent hosts.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between those two again? The tribe leader. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the tribe leader basically just is more of like a teaching it's like I said, introduction in the beginning. It's going to be really short, probably 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
Just introducing the Bible point, talking a little bit about their tribe. And then again, at the end, they're going to come back, review the lesson that Moses taught, review the craft and how it all ties together. And, again, that's going to be a different tribe leader. So they're going to give a little info about their tribe as well. Mm-hmm. So that's the tribe leader. The tent host is the one that does the craft.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, great. So we have a lot of junior high and high school kids in our church who love to help out, and that's awesome. And that's one of the things I love about Summer Blast is that you can interact with our kids, and everyone really kind of pitches in. So, so for our junior high and high schoolers who want to help out, what kind of things can they do? What can they be involved with in this?
Well, I think they would really like to do be a game host at the Israelite camp. I think that's a lot of fun for them. So a game would be like, for example, like beanbag toss or like mini basketball. It's kind of like carnival style games. So I think that's something fun that our young volunteers would like to do. But honestly, I think they can do anything. I think it would be fun for the little ones to see a younger volunteer being a tent host mm-hmm. and showing, a craft for them to do. So they can also help decorate. So I think they can do a lot.
Okay, that sounds great. So one of the things you mentioned was the Israelite camp, and that's going to be on the last day of the week. The rest of the days, I mean, if we can kind of go through it, can you walk us through the schedule sort of for the whole week?
Sure. Monday, the families come to our church to pick up their kit. That has all the materials that they're going to need to do the interactive video activities. They'll also get a t-shirt for each child registered on that day. We have all the information about that on our website. We do want to encourage families to register online so that they can guarantee that they get a t-shirt and they get their preferred t-shirt size. So we do want to encourage that online, but also on the day they come and pick up their kit, they can also register on that day as well. So we will have some extra kits made up because we know that a lot of families do like to just come in and register in person. Mm-hmm. So that's Monday. And then Monday evening is when they tune in to our virtual VBS, and that's where they see all the videos. That's Monday night. And so that's going to be the same thing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. They're going to tune in to virtual VBS. Then on Friday, we have our Israelite camp. So that's going to be from 2:30 to 6:30. But what they do is they're going to reserve a 1-hour time slot during that time to come in and enjoy the camp. So that's going to be a bunch of tents set up, and we're going to transport them back to the wilderness where the Israelites, were camped out in tents. And this is where they're going to do their games, they're going to do more crafts and activities and things like that. But they do have to reserve their time slot. So again, we want to encourage families to register online so that they can get their preferred time slot, because spots are going to fill up pretty quick. We just actually opened up registration yesterday, and I've already had several kids sign up. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. I saw the registrations
coming in. And then I guess I can't forget Friday evening, we have their last video, virtual VBS for them. That's going to be a little shorter than what it's been the Monday through Thursday, but they're also going to see a slideshow. So we're going to encourage families to submit pictures of their kids doing the activities. And then also we're going to have somebody walking around taking pictures during the Israelite camp, and we're going to have a big slideshow that they're going to be able to see themselves on Friday night.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay, all right. Well, I think that's all the questions I had. And I just want to encourage everyone. Thank you so much, Susie, for all your work organizing this. It sounds like a lot of fun. And thanks for being so flexible. I know this must be really hard, with the situation, but it sounds like you've got a really good plan.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been, a little bit of a challenge, but it's been a blessing as well. And I think this is going to be something that will really help to bring our church back together. We've been apart for so long. I know we've been connecting on Zoom and everything, and that's been great. But I do miss seeing everybody in person, hearing everybody's voices, talking to everyone. So I think this is going to be just an awesome time for us to get back together and to introduce a lot of people in the community to our church.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so if you want to register to be volunteer, just text the word BLAST, B-L-A-S-T, to our church number, which is 909-285-0778. You can also find out more about volunteering by going to our website, which is sierravistacc.com/SB-help. So that's Summer Blast Help, SB Help. And that'll give you more information. It'll show you, you'll have on there the presentation that Susie mentioned, and we'll put this recording up there too if you want to review it. And so I think all the information is there, and you can register online too. Just click a button there as well. So if you want to register your kids, then all you have to do is type sierravistacc.com/SB2020. So that'll be where you can find out more, and there's a link there to do the registration. So that's SB2020 at our website, and all of that is down below. You can see it. So thank you very much. Thanks, Susie, for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you, Hector.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, well, we hope that you will register to volunteer as soon as possible. Please try to volunteer by next Friday, June 12th. We really need you to commit by then so that we have some time to do some additional training. So please commit by next Friday, June 12th. And look in your mail for some postcards. We're sending out some postcards. And if you think of somebody who might want to attend, the postcard would be a great way to pass along to them that information that they need to find out more and register. Okay, well, blessings to all of you, and let's go further along in our service this morning.
to the Lamb who was slain be glory. Now to the King on the throne, who was and is to come, and to the Lamb who was slain be glory. Now to the King on the throne, who was and is to come, and to the Lamb who was slain be glory. Holy, you alone are holy, matchless in your glory. No one is like you, worthy. You alone are worthy. We adore you, holy God. Every valley will be lifted high, and the weak will be the strong. When you come like lightning in the sky, how long, oh Lord, how long? Kings on earth will scatter when they hear the thundering sounds of angel songs. Hearts will tremble, filled with holy fear. How long, oh Lord, how long? All our hopes are fixed on you, that your promises are true, and one day you will return. All our treasures here will fade, so we long to see your face. Until then our hearts will burn. that your promises are true, and one day you will return. All our treasures here will fade, so we long to see your face. Until then, our hearts will burn. How long, oh Lord? How long, oh Lord? How long? When troubles come, when darkness crowds, when fortunes fail and loss surrounds, my soul is weak, but Christ is strong, and so to Him I leave it all. For He who holds all things can bear each care I bring. So I lay it all Jesus.
Over the last few weeks, John and I have been preaching through some of the Psalms that we have cherished. I would like to continue that series today, but unfortunately, I feel like I cannot. To be honest, I'll be preaching a sermon that I really wish I didn't have to preach. For there are things going on in our country that I wish were not so. And there are responses to those things that I wish were not so. We have been inundated, overwhelmed even, with news of injustice, news of protests, riots, politics, polemics, dispute, and disagreement. A friend commented that it feels like we're living in this really weird apocalyptic movie. And another friend noted that when watching the news, it's like watching footage of the stuff that happens in totalitarian countries. It really is hard to believe that some of the images and videos we have seen are happening in the United States. There was a curfew imposed that was far stricter than even what my parents could conjure up. And there's still a global pandemic going on. And yes, while the country is reopening, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what the future holds. Tumultuous times tap into our souls uniquely. It feels as if we are caught in an inescapable tempest, yearning to just return to the routine of our lives. There are responsibilities to tend to and bills to pay, after all. It is hard enough just to find a little bit of time for rest and recreation. I've already heard the screams from many for things to just be normal again. But is normalcy a virtue? Is it what we are to pursue right now? Or are the times we are experiencing a call to think and respond differently? As I prayed for the Lord's leading this week, I was led to perhaps the most cliche of passages that could be taught during the racial and political tension that we are experiencing. And you have likely heard countless sermons already about the passage that I will be teaching on. I wonder if I can say anything that hasn't been said before. Nevertheless, I am trusting the Lord's leading, and since I am, my hope is that it would inspire a new sense of normal, new thoughts, new behaviors. And with this in mind, I want to look to a parable in Luke chapter 10. And before we get to the parable, a little bit of context. There's an expert in religious law who's wanting to test Jesus. This expert is wanting to see what this teacher from the backwoods really knew. There's an interesting power dynamic at play in which the expert of the law is looking down at the new guy. And he begins by asking Jesus how eternal life could be inherited. A basic test question. Jesus responds by asking the expert, hey, what do you know from the law? What have you read? To which this expert quotes two Old Testament passages, one from Deuteronomy, one from Leviticus, citing that we are to love God with everything that we got, and that we're also to love our neighbor. Jesus affirms the response, but in doing so, he reverses the power dynamic. Essentially, what Jesus is saying is, why are you asking me? You already know the answer. Go practice what you preach. And then we pick up in Luke chapter 10, verse 29. But the expert, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? It appears as if the expert wants to regain the initiative. For surely there are limits to who is considered a neighbor. His question implies that there are people who are not his neighbor. And then Jesus enters into the famous parable in verse 30. Let's read on. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road. But when he saw the injured man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came up to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was traveling came to where the injured man was, and when he saw him, he felt compassion for him. He went up to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever else you spend, I will repay you when I come back this way." Which of these 3 do you think became a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in religious law said, "The one who showed mercy to him." So Jesus said to him, "Go and do the same." So much of this parable has been laid before us. But naturally, I want to do my job to try to expose the fantastic depth of this parable. Now, the journey from Jerusalem to Jericho was not necessarily an easy road. Just about over 3,000 feet elevation change over the course of 17 miles, the road ran through rocky and desert country, full of caves and rocky outcroppings. It was suitable ground for brigands and robbers. Now, Jesus gives no identifiers of the man who was assaulted and robbed along the road. It could be any man. The audience, though, would likely consider him to be one of their own, a fellow Jew. Now, in verse 31, it is by chance, by coincidence, that a priest happens to walk by. On a long and lonely road, an injured person may be waiting a long time before any help could arrive. The priest, nevertheless, has first opportunity to show care. Now, a little bit about the Greek language. In Greek, the word kai can mean and, also, or but. In verse 31, our translators have correctly translated the word as but. See, a priest comes by, we expect him to do something. Remember, a priest is someone who is a mediator between God and people. We would expect him to act on behalf of God. But he crosses to the other side and is on his way. We expect him to respond, but it challenges our expectations. It challenges what we thought he would have naturally done. Now, much has been stated that he would have been afraid of defiling himself by touching a corpse. But I think that is overstated and it misses the point of the parable. Rather, Jesus is painting a picture that I think will be fleshed out in more detail later. The next traveler was a Levite. Levites in the New Testament were a little bit different than in the Old Testament. In New Testament times, Levites were inferior to the priests, but still a privileged class who had responsibilities and duties in the temple system. The first 2 travelers are going to be contrasted with the third. The first 2 travelers see the body and move on. The third is different. The third is not an ordinary layperson. They're not just your average traveler. In fact, from the eyes of the Jews, the audience who's listening to this parable is far worse. They are a Samaritan. They are seen as racially inferior. They were seen as religious blasphemers. They were compromisers of God's law. It is hard for us to appreciate the hatred between these 2 groups. During the life of Jesus, we have record that the tensions were especially high between the Samaritans and the Jews. They were seen, the Samaritans that is, as having no part of God's covenantal relationship. They were looked at with contempt. the Samaritan defies expectations and is different from the other travelers. And what is it that the Samaritan did upon seeing the wounded traveler? The text states, he felt compassion. The others did not feel anything. But for the Samaritan, it was compassion that moved him to act. It was compassion that moved the Samaritan to use his oil, his wine, his bandages, his animal, his money, and his time to care for the wounded. And then Jesus' question to the religious expert, which one became a neighbor? Or some translations say, which one proved to be a neighbor? In the New Testament dictionary of the in the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, Kittel and Friedrich write, one cannot define one's neighbor, one can only be a neighbor. Jesus' question serves really more as a statement. And the statement is piercing because it cuts through the religious, national, and racial markers that were so foundational to the audience. No, it cut through all of those. The man's response, the expert of the law's response to Jesus' question, is also very significant. It appears he cannot even bring himself to commend the Samaritan by his ethnic identity. He simply states the one who showed mercy was the neighbor. Jewish Talmudic tradition forbade Jews to give and receive works of love from non-Jews. Keep it in the family, so to speak. Jesus' teaching transcends those barriers. The people of God are recognized by behavior that is consistent with God himself. The priest and the Levite failed, whereas the Samaritan succeeded. He showed mercy. And why is it that he showed mercy? Because he first felt compassion. And this is to be our perpetual example. Show compassion without stipulation. We show compassion to hurt and wounded people. We show compassion to people we disagree with. We show compassion to people we do agree with. We show compassion because Christ showed you compassion first. We show compassion without stipulation, for compassion is the heart of Christ. Compassion connects us with people. Compassion compels our action. And so importantly, compassion paves the way for the gospel message of Christ, which first and foremost is what we should always be about. You know, there's no political party that has a monopoly on compassion. There is no race or ethnicity that has a monopoly on compassion. There is no socioeconomic class that has a monopoly on compassion. But as people who claim to follow Jesus Christ, compassion should be central to everything we do. Show compassion without stipulation. You know, 2020 has been a bizarre year. In many respects, it has been a litmus test for our souls. And amongst Christians, it exposed so much. And right now, we are so aware that we are standing on racially and politically charged ground. And when confronted with racial and political issues, we tend to respond racially or politically. Another option is that, well, let's just put our heads in the sand. Keep our heads down. Let's mind our own business. In fact, that was the example of the priest and the Levite. After all, they did not assault the man who was lying in the road. They didn't beat him. They didn't rob him. Why should it be their business? They've done nothing wrong. And to care for him would be a disruption of their life. To care for him would be an inconvenience. They didn't do anything, so just keep going. Unfortunately, this can be the response in the church. Regrettably, it's been my response at times. But no, we cannot ignore issues we are confronted with. The issues that appear along our journey must be faced. We cannot step over a body on the road or pass alongside it, feeling justified that we didn't cause the harm, so therefore it isn't our business. To do so is to follow the wrong example in the parable. The teaching of Christ, the gospel message, and in fact, all of Scripture are not just religious theological ideas. They are meant to impact us in real life with real world issues. I said last week, the gospel deals with real life. The Bible deals with real life. Scripture intersects with all of the experiences of humanity. And I think right now, we see very clearly that we are confronted with a series of bodies in the road that we cannot ignore. We cannot keep walking. We cannot just put our head in the sand. We have to consider how to respond, to think, to act, and engage. But in considering a response, the temptation, as I mentioned earlier, is that we respond politically or racially. These are not the examples of the Samaritan. The Samaritan's immediate response when he saw the man on the road? Compassion. He showed compassion without stipulation. He was unconcerned with theological differences, political differences, racial differences, ethnic differences, or any other kind of differences, because compassion overwhelmed him. And then he sacrificed his own so that compassion could blossom into mercy and care. My friends, show compassion without stipulation. This is the heart of Christ. Now, there are a billion what ifs and objections of why we should not show compassion, and I can only respond by saying, show compassion with stipulation. This is our starting response. You do not have to see eye to eye with someone to show compassion. You do not have to agree with someone to show compassion. You don't even need to like them to show compassion. We prove we are Christ-like. We prove to be neighbors, not by defining who it is we can show compassion to, but by, in fact, showing compassion without stipulation. And in doing so, we represent the character of Christ in a powerful way. This must be a concept that grounds our worldview. For this is profoundly a Christian idea. You know, psychologists talk about the idea that so much of what we do is on autopilot. We go through our routine in a routine manner. So much so that we hardly notice we are on autopilot. From our wake-up rituals to the commute to work, our jobs and tasks at work, the return commute, dinner and the unwinding of the day, we have our rhythms. Students have their own rituals as well. Stay-at-home parents and the retired all have their routines. We're on autopilot so much of life. And autopilot can prevent us from being reactive in a godly manner, and it prevents us from being proactive in a godly manner. But 2020 has disrupted our autopilot. And I strongly believe that God is wanting to and absolutely will use the fact that our autopilot has been disrupted to pursue some new normals, some new thoughts, some new patterns of behavior. And so I'm thinking, how can we then indeed show compassion without stipulation? Not just to think about the idea, but to show it and make this part of our normal routine and life. I think first, we have to be praying that God will cultivate a compassionate heart in us. Second, we have to be praying that God will expose our heart so that we can see where our heart is callous, rude, insensitive, or prejudiced. It's in there. But by the grace of God, it can be exposed and it can be culled. And then third, we have to look at the example of Christ and model our actions and behavior after him. You know, I think when Jesus saw Zacchaeus, the tax collector, and he said, we're dining tonight in your house. So often we see Jesus spending time with people that society and the religious community said are less than. He spent time with outcasts. He spent time with all sorts of people. He spent time with the elite and the outsider. He spent time with people. And here's what I know about people. Not a lot, because people seem weird to me, but this is what I know. They don't like being preached at, especially the people who have been told by religious folks that they're sinners and outcasts and outsiders. They don't like being preached at. They don't like drive-by Christianity in which they receive a Bible verse with a passing condemnation. But the fact that so many people that were shunned by the religious community found community with Christ is interesting. And I believe it's because Christ listened to them. He heard them and he showed them compassion. It was compassion that brought Christ into proximity with people. They felt safe. And in feeling safe, then they were open to his transforming work. They were open to his teaching. They were open to receive because in Christ they saw something different. They saw the heart of God. And so I think one of the easiest, most practical ways to take our prayer life a step further is how can we be talking with people, but not talking so that we can talk, engaging with them so that we can listen. Hear someone's experiences. Ask about their perspective. Sure, it is valuable to do this with people in your bubble and your echo chamber. But even better to do with people who are different than you, politically, racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, whatever. And as you do, show compassion without stipulation. Listen for the things that move you. Listen for the things that encourage you, inspire you. Listen for the things that make you sad. Now, it is possible that you do not know how to show compassion. I've met a few people who struggle to show compassion in any situation. And I'm confident the community here at Sierra Vista can help you and encourage you to develop those kinds of skills so that you can show compassion to people. I also want to say, don't assume we excel without imperfection here at Sierra Vista. While rare, I have spoken with a few minorities who have heard racially insensitive comments. I've talked with women at Sierra Vista who were unfortunately on the receiving end of misogynistic behavior. In our church, we must not be so callous to think that we are not capable of harming others. We must not be callous in thinking these are issues that don't occur in our bubble. No, we must be diligent to pursue the heart of Christ consistently across multiple domains. I'm committing to this in my own life, and I'm considering the number of ways in which I can grow to be a more compassionate person, to expand my capacities. I encourage you to do the same, not to pursue the old normals, but new normals in which we, as the people of Christ, are connecting and allowing people to see the heart of Christ. Now, does showing compassion to people come with risks? Well, of course it does. Of course your compassion may be abused. Of course your compassion may be taken advantage of. And if it does, in fact, when it does, you can better understand God's relentless compassion and grace to you then. If you feel this sermon is incomplete, you are correct. It is a conversation starter, but not the full conversation. If you would like to talk further, I invite you to a conversation. And whether you agree or disagree with me, I aspire to show compassion to you, to hear you, to feel with you, and hopefully work to understanding and clarity, not just rooted in my own opinion, but in a dialogue in which we have opportunity to practice being Christ-like. But to work to effective solutions, we must first allow the Holy Spirit to cultivate in us the ability to show compassion without stipulation.